Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I want to give you an update on some things happening both around the lawsuit that's being filed this week and also the possibilities of reopening the embassies, which we hope is going to be happening pretty soon, but there's some caveats to that. So this video should be interesting to DV 2020 and DV 2021 selectees. Some of this applies to both, and then I think I'm probably going to run out of time, but I'll talk about the effects for DV 2020 applicants in particular in probably a part 2 of this video. So okay, let's talk about what's happening. So as some of you will know, there's a lawsuit planned by the AILA. That's the American Immigration Lawyers Association in America. They have agreed to take on the case of not only DV lottery selectees, but also other people affected by the latest immigration ban. And they have been compiling all of the information, as a class action suit against Trump's ban. And their plan at the moment, as I understand it, is to file their case on Friday, this Friday coming, which is the 17th. They had told me last week that it was going to be the week commencing the 13th, and that means, the week that begins on the Monday the 13th and finishes on the Friday the 17th, so they're on time. But obviously the compilation of all of this information is pretty extensive. They've had a number of excellent lawyers on this already. I've observed some of the correspondence with some of the selectees that have been chosen as class representatives, and I can tell you they're doing a great job. I don't know what's going to happen with the lawsuit. We can't guarantee that it's going to have some effect, but we certainly hope it will. My ideal situation is that we would get a temporary restraining order against the ban, which would stop the ban almost immediately. I mean, pretty much the next day. Basically, they'll file the action on Friday in federal court. We could see a hearing on that as early as next week, but I don't know what the timing will be for the hearing, so there isn't going to be an update until next week at the earliest. And they will ask for a restraining order against the ban because people are being harmed now, and we need relief from this order now. So a temporary restraining order is the ideal situation, and in the past judges have approved those sort of restraining orders where it can be shown that people are actually suffering some harm, and certainly that's been the main focus of what the lawyers are trying to prove at the moment, that people are suffering some harm. So if we get the TRO, temporary restraining order, then there'll be a date set for another hearing where the government's lawyers and the AILA will have further time to prepare for that, and they would hear that case before the same judge that grants the TRO. But in between the time when the TRO is granted, if it's granted, and this is my hope, this isn't a guarantee by any means, but this is my hope, in between the time when the TRO is granted and the hearing, DV lottery cases would be able to proceed, other immigration cases would be able to proceed, right? In theory, right? So this is what we need. At some later point there would be a hearing, and the hearing could be impactful. It could maybe take away the restraining order or force the government to rewrite the order in some way. We don't know exactly what the effects would be, and I can't predict that. There's no point in me trying to predict that. I think the case has merits. I think it's a powerful case. I think the immigration ban is unjust and unjustified, but we can't be certain, obviously, how a judge will see that. Okay, and what sort of case the government could make, etc. We just have to wait and see what happens. Okay, so that's the first thing we need. The ban being overturned would be impactful to a group of selectees, and I'll talk about that soon. But we certainly need also, we need to see some reopening of the embassies. there's some people who can be helped without the embassies actually conducting further interviews, and I'll talk about that in part 2 of this video, or later in this video if I haven't gone too long. And there's other people who will certainly need interviews in order to get set up with their green cards, with their opportunity. Now, the reality is, we need that reopening procedure to happen immediately. We need that. We're running out of time. The good news is that over the weekend, the Department of State started indicating that embassies could reopen depending on local conditions. Now, that's a very important point. I've been telling people about this for some months now, that the original order to close all the embassies was made centrally by the Department of State on March, I think it was March 17th or March 20th, around that time. And when they make a central decision like that, only the Department of State can reverse that centralized decision. And essentially that's what they've done, right? They've taken away their blocking of the embassies being open. That means that an embassy can choose to open now or soon if they're able to, depending on local conditions and depending on staffing, etc. They may open in a slightly more open way than they have been. So there's different phases. They have phase 1 opening, phase 2 opening. Phase 1 is 40% of staff, phase 2 is 80% of staff. Phase 3, I presume, it would be 100% of staff. But different embassies around the world, some of them are already in phase 1 and phase 2, and so the conditions in various countries would be different from country to country. So it isn't possible to say all embassies are going to be open by the end of this week or next week, or it's not something as simple as that. We can't be as clear as that. It's going to depend on the situation in each individual country. So basically over the next week or so, week to 2 weeks, we should start to see announcements from embassies with clarifications whether they're going to open or not. Up to now, they've been given the standard line, we're not opening, either because of COVID, they talk about the pandemic, or because of the decision that was taken centrally. And the decision being taken away, now the central closure being taken away, is a positive thing. But we have to see what the reaction will be from the embassies. So that it is good news. We needed a couple of things to happen. We need to win the lawsuit, and we need to win, we need to win that, get a TRO, and we needed for the embassies to open. So the fact that there's some movement on the embassies opening, and the fact that the lawsuit will be filed on Friday is, all positive things, and could benefit everybody, right, in some way. Now, let's talk about that then. Let me just see if that covers... Curtis Morrison's lawsuit has been filed. It was filed, I think, last week. A judge has been appointed. That's normal. People have asked me, by the way, is it good news that a judge has been appointed? Does it mean anything? Well, these things just have to go through a process. You can't get so jumpy. You can't get so worked up over something that is a normal part of the process and assume what it means. It doesn't mean anything that a judge has been appointed. It just means that that's gone to the next stage of the process, and that had to happen. There wasn't a question mark over that. It just is part of the process. So we have yet to see what that means. Now, the Curtis Morrison lawsuit will only do something for the people named as plaintiffs on that case. It's not going to help everybody, whereas the suit by the AILA is a class action suit, which means it's supposed to be represented. There are individual people that have been chosen to represent a whole class of people like them. So they're representatives perhaps from a country or from a region or from a certain phase in the process. And so when the lawsuit for the class action suit is won, it's more useful generically for everybody, as opposed to the named lawsuit that Curtis Morrison has done, which is only useful for those people. that are named as plaintiffs on the case. Now, you have to remember, Curtis Morrison, is a relatively small firm. He and his colleague that are working together on this particular thing, they had to charge fees. They can't work for nothing. They obviously are acting in their commercial interest, but also in your best interest if you're a named plaintiff. But it is an entirely different thing to do a very large pro bono case like the AILA have done. And so, that's just a different thing. But the AILA have centralized resources because they act on behalf of all immigration lawyers in America. And so they have some sort of budget, and they've been able to work with some other firms who have interest in seeing this ban removed as well. And so together they've put in an enormous amount of resources which none of us could have afforded. I couldn't afford to pay these lawyers to do that, and you couldn't afford to do that. None of us could have afforded that sort of work if we were paying their fees. And it's a marvelous thing that they're doing this as a pro bono case. And so I appreciate Jesse Bless and everybody that's working on that team. I thank goodness that there's somebody out there that is prepared to fight and able to fight on behalf of people such as yourselves. And I also applaud Curtis Morrison and his colleagues. Again, he was prepared to file the case whether he had 5 people or 50 people. He didn't ever say, we wouldn't file if we don't get enough people. He was prepared to take on the work, whether enough plaintiffs signed up or not, and that's an important point. And he's also prepared to keep on fighting on that for as long as it takes, until he gets an answer. And so, I admire that too. That's not an insignificant decision. So that's where we stand on the lawsuit and the embassy opening. What I want to talk about next is really more for DV 2020 people, because the effects of the lawsuits the AILA lawsuit could affect everybody in DV 2020 and DV 2021, because if the immigrant ban is blocked, it would be removed for the rest of the year as well. And obviously Trump could come up with another way of wording it, he could come up with another plan, and we might be back in the same position in a few weeks' time, but it would buy us time, and that's important. So we might have to go around this cycle a couple of times. We'll see. I can't predict what's going to happen, but Trump has got some other things on his mind over the next few months. He should have, frankly. He's got 135,000 people dead in this country now because of his lack of management of the situation with the pandemic. And the country is in turmoil, and he's facing re-election. So he should have some other things on his mind other than trying to mess around with immigrants. Let's see if that's true. Alright, so in part 2 of this video, I'm going to talk about DV 2020 people and the effects of the immigrant ban, and the TRO that we hope will be achieved, and the embassy's opening, on which groups of people will be helped by that. And I think we need to be realistic at this point, and so we have to talk about that, and not everyone's going to be happy. Because we're just running short on time. So I want to explain that in a separate video. I've tried making this video once already last night, and it just went on too long, and so I'm separating it out into 2 chunks. Alright? Okay, I hope that's helpful, and I'll be uploading this video later on tonight. You'll see it tomorrow, and tomorrow is Thursday, so you'll see that before the case is filed on Friday. And hopefully that'll be interesting and explain what's going on. Alright? Okay. I'll speak to you if you're DV 2020. I'll see you in part 2 in a moment. Alright. Bye now.